Hello, we are back to the office of legal company Matuk Basuni, and we're hosted here by the managing partner Jerry Habibian. And basically, we've been here 1 month ago, and we had introduction to the company and had introduction to Jerry. And if you're interested, please have a look at the link to the previous video. And we discussed a few issues, and now we're back here 1 month later. And with the market being significantly lower since we met last time. And we just want to discuss a few more questions and go into a couple more details, but probably to start from the new information about this European law of money laundering related to the cryptocurrency. So your views?
Well, as I said, always, there is no regulation that apply only for one particular type of transactions or type of financial instrument. All the vanilla regulations that we know in our normal financial world, we will see it apply slowly to the crypto industry. Despite the fact that people say that crypto is unbreakable, it's part of blockchain, is untraceable. This is correct probably within the chain.
Yes.
But then again, when the regulation comes and you always have a starting point within the crypto and an end point. The starting point is cash that will be transformed into crypto, or it's the mines that will create the crypto. And then you have the end user and how this is being used. So there will always be people around the chain, whether at the beginning or at the end. So it's only normal that the European Commission comes into force and come up with such a regulation, because at the end of the day, cryptocurrency, because of its nature, because of the digital nature, and it's not something that you can trace in word of like as a tangible some assets or a tangible instrument, let me put it this way. They realize that there is high risk associated to it, especially for money laundering, terrorist financing, so on and so forth. So it's very important that this type of instrument needs to be regulated. And if you remember also in our previous discussions, we also touched upon the fact that regulations is very important in order to mitigate the risk associated with such. To protect not only the customers, everybody. Now you're not talking only about customer protections, we're talking about society protections, we're talking about national security in certain cases. I mean, imagine this technology is used by the underground, say, organizations or organized crimes organization. And it will really become really problematic. Okay, today it took the conventional banks, it took them, I say, 10, 15, 20 years to have what they have today in terms of robust anti-money laundering systems. Okay, and today this technology can come and defeat that. So you need to go hand in hand. So personally, I'm not surprised in seeing such regulations coming into effect. Now, what would be the impact? It's still early to decide. Let's wait and see. But one thing is for sure is that when an instrument is regulated, at least by an institution like Europe, it only gives you an indication that this instrument has enough exposure within Europe so that the Europeans have thought to bring a regulation, at least to start with, on money laundering prevention. So I'm sure this is only the first roll of the ball, or the snowball that slowly will become bigger and bigger, and we will see in the future more regulations encompassing the crypto markets.
I agree with you, and I think we're both coming from banking background, right? So we know how serious the problem of money laundering, right, and how it should be addressed. And I think the whole world now understand the importance of fighting with the terrorism, right? So, and I think unfortunately cryptocurrencies associated with many illegal activities, many criminal activities, and so on. The thing is that, for example, and on the other side, actually, for example, in UAE, there's a project where there's more and more banks are actually joining the blockchain, not cryptocurrency, but blockchain project, which will allow to significantly improve the KYC process and will make the account opening and everything is more streamlined. So it actually will benefit ironically, the same technology is actually used to improve the things. But what, for me, I think my understanding is, again, from what I learned in the banking, right, that money laundering is never done with $10 or $20, right? It's a huge amount of money with a huge operations and so on. So what I don't understand about regulation is that, let's say, for example, they say, if the transaction is between my wallet and exchange, it should be regulated. If transaction is between your wallet and my wallet, it's of exchange, it's not effectively, the regulation doesn't cover it. So if I'm a miner, so I can mine the things, I can transfer to you the currency, and then, because it's very easy for people to put 2-3 layers between themselves and the exchange.
Yeah.
So my only concern is that it makes life of normal people a little bit more complicated, but what I'm not sure that the measures as the and I agree with you, right? This is just beginning of the journey, right?
Yeah.
But it actually, could it be that it will make life and overall acceptance of cryptocurrency slower, but will not necessarily be able to restrict really criminal activities? Does that make sense?
Well, listen, as a matter of fact, restricting criminal activities just by having procedures in itself is not enough. Mm-hmm. It's just a tool. Mm-hmm. The regulations are a tool in order to assist in restricting or in fighting. Mm-hmm. Okay. We know also from the classical and conventional anti-money laundering regulations, we know that those regulations are just a tool assisting the law enforcement agencies, the central banks, to be able to monitor more, to be able to identify suspicious transactions, and then when you identify the transaction itself, then you can dig more into details and investigate and follow the trail or follow the money. Now, if we transpose the same thing within the crypto world, leaving the crypto world without any regulation.
No, that's not an option.
It's not an option because, as you just rightly said, if it's between my wallet and your wallet, no one will be able to know. Yeah. Okay, only if when there is an exchange involved, that probably the exchange will keep some record. All will apply common sense if there is no regulations. Now, having those regulations, would it deter money launderers or terrorist financiers from using cryptocurrency as such? My blunt answer would be no, in general. Yeah. No, because even today, they're still the terrorists and money launderers, they still use the conventional banking system.
But probably, it's more complicated, right?
It becomes more complicated for them, probably not within the scale that used to happen maybe 50 years ago, okay? But still is there. And one thing we need to take into consideration, unfortunately, the criminal mind, this is how criminal mind is set. They're always one step ahead. They always think, they come up with creative ideas that when you discover it during an investigation, you say, how did they think about all this? So they always think one step ahead. And I think crypto, they thought one step ahead and they use it. Because crypto, initially, we're not talking about cryptocurrency. Initially, the technology was blockchain technology. And blockchain technology itself, as you rightly mentioned, it could be used in very good way because blockchain is a series of data, which is like, the digits, we all know it's distributed 0, 1, 0, and binary combinations, but these binary combinations makes it so difficult for someone to be able to hack it and to able to, I would say, forge it. Okay, so it will be great to be used in electronic vaults. It will be great to be used for banks to keep their documentation, for government to keep their top secret documentation. So blockchain is good to be used. Now, unfortunately, I would say, I don't want to call it the criminal word, but let's say illegitimate business word took advantage of this technology, and then cryptocurrency came in, and others followed. Initially, we were talking about Bitcoin. Today, we talk about Bitcoin, we talk about Ethereum, we talk about many types of currencies that are being developed. Now, to answer your question, whether this rule will put a stop to people using crypto, no. Whether this rule will play in the advantage of having this type of currency recognized in the world, I would say this is the first step, yes. This is the first, I would say, stone.
Yes.
But then it needs to be built on it because the regulators need to understand more how the technology and how the cryptocurrency functions and develop rules against it so that it becomes a regulated currency or a regulated instrument. I still refuse to call it as a currency because currency historically has a different definition. It has to have something in the backbone as a value. So far we don't have it. It's just a binary combination, as I said.
I think it should be more considered as, basically, SEC says, for example, in case of Bitcoin and potentially Ethereum, as a commodity.
As a commodity, let's put it as a commodity, as a digital commodity. So it's good to have the regulations. It will help in bringing a future regulations to this type of virtual assets or commodities. And then we still need to wait and see. I mean, everything is new. I mean, you just mentioned in your opening of this conversation, you just mentioned that last month we were talking, and crypto, or let's say the digital currency, was here, and today it just fell dramatically.
Yeah.
So we don't know what tomorrow will hide. So let's wait and see. We're still in the beginning of this journey. I think from a technology point of view, the technology has future. Whether the instrument will have a future or no, it's still early to decide. Let's wait and see. But one thing is for sure, that lots of regulators around the world, and the European Commission is just an example to it. A lot of regulators focusing on getting regulations against or around these transactions.
No, I agree with you, right? That if we consider it to be as a first step, I think it's a very positive development. It just, in some cases, some regulation can cause more like stiffening even innovation rather than really resolve the underpinning problem. So I think we're hopefully going to watch space together and see how it develops. But it's interesting development. And then going back to closer to our home turf, I think we see in UAE, as we discussed, UAE become kind of unofficial cryptocurrency of the world, right? And we have over here more than 60 free zones. Some free zones we discussed that we believe that the hub of all the crypto projects will become VARA, Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority. And at the same time, certain zones already issue some licenses allowing certain activities, right? So what is your view on those free zones versus VARA? What do you think, how people should position themselves?
Okay, let me start by saying one thing, and reminding the audience and reminding ourselves as well of the statement that the UAE public prosecutor made a couple of weeks back. After we met, there was a public prosecution made a statement and made a very, I would say, bold statement about cryptocurrency, and reminded everybody that dealing, marketing, you name it, doing any activity where you are trying to market a currency that is not licensed, or an activity that is not licensed under UAE law, is considered to be a criminal offense. So starting from there, to answer your question, no one in the UAE is supposed to market, produce, promote, talk about certain currencies or certain assets that are not licensed or regulated. Therefore, you ask me, there are certain free zones that they give licenses, different type of licenses. I am aware of certain free zones giving licenses, but those licenses, none of the licenses mentions crypto as such.
Well, they do explicitly, but maybe as, like, for example, I think one of the things we looked at was more proprietary.
Propriety is something else.
Yeah. It has a word crypto, but it doesn't say marketing.
Yeah, but this is where we need to be careful. The law is very clear. You are not entitled to market cryptocurrency. Like, I cannot open a company and say, I am selling cryptocurrency, come and buy cryptocurrency from me. I cannot. But if I open my own company and I want to invest into crypto in my prop book, which is the propriety book, it's my, it's my own problem if I lose money.
But do you need license for that then?
Well, technically speaking, you would not need license. However, if you are a fund, let's say, and your fund wants to invest in its prop book, then probably that needs to be mentioned in a license. Again, because it's very sporadic, and each free zone probably is coming up with an idea.
Yes.
Okay, I think we are way ahead of specifying exactly what are the regulations or what are the do's and don'ts in terms of crypto. We know that there is an initiative, a very clear initiative by VARA that we know of. We know that there is another initiative by ESCA in terms of licensing exchange houses, etc., etc. So we need to wait for those regulations to be finalized and to be issued so that everybody knows the framework that he can operate within. One thing is for sure is that we are heading towards that. We are heading towards these regulations. But when, we're still waiting. We come back from summer holidays, this would be issued and everybody will be working on. Now, for investors, exchange houses, whomever wants to get themselves ready, they can start getting themselves ready by having their manuals, they're having their internal regulations ready. And ESCA had issued, if I'm not mistaken, certain guidelines towards what type of manuals you need to have, what type of policies you need to have, etc. So I would recommend that these companies or these people who wants to invest in this or wants to create such companies start by preparing this type of documentation. Once these documentation are ready and the license are open, then it's for you a matter of choice whether you go to VARA or you go to ESCA or you go to XYZ or ABC. Just get your foundations right. Now, we've had certain exposure on these type of policies. It's not rocket science, because at the end of the day, as we started our discussion when we talked about the European Union, it's just go back to basics. And going back to basics is always, know your customer, have your risk assessment, have your compliance regulations, have your anti-money laundering, have all your manuals in place, and just be ready. Once the license is issued, you just plug in your license to it.
So effectively, the companies who are interested to operate in this space, legally being able to use all the facilities of UAE and maybe even potential marketing, right, from UAE, and maybe even on territory of UAE if it is ESCA regulated, right? So I think these companies should now concentrate on preparing all the policies, and the way I hear it from you, it would be very similar, for example, if the company wanted to be licensed by the FSA.
100%, or licensed even by ESCA to become a brokerage firm. Okay, they need to have certain policies in place. Those policies needs to be in place. Then you would be remained with the, I would say, with the digital or the technology component that you can plug in at the end once the clear regulations are issued.
And your company specifically can, if there's a company like that, they can assist in preparing.
Well, we're not here to do marketing, but again, we are a law firm, and we have the capacity to advise clients on how best to operate within the current existing regulations. So whatever current existing regulations, we will always assist, and then whatever updates will come, we'll assist them with the updates.
Perfect. And again, probably the most difficult question of the day, the time frame. You said it's coming, and you said maybe after the summer holidays.
We really don't know. I mean, if we look at when the announcement was made, it was made, I think, in January for VARA.
I think so,
Yeah. So January the announcement was made. We know very, very well, and we know for a fact that there are a lot of work happening in the background. A lot of there's a beehive working behind these type of projects. So you can expect it anytime. I mean, the UAE in general and Dubai in particular and Abu Dhabi as well, they always keep us amazed in how they surprise us with very well established policies and regulations. So at any point in time when this would come, we know that it's going to be state-of-the-art regulations.
And I think is that I think UAE probably will be ahead of many other countries in that sense. It will have a clear regulations, will have dedicated authority that will have expertise in this area, right? When in other countries it's probably more regulated by central banks, so right. So I think it will be much more advantageous. So probably some people can still wait, right? But I think the good news is I think they, as I said, they can prepare by just doing more or less standard processes and procedures of similar to any financial institutions like a brokerage. So I think that's very interesting. Hopefully we'll hear more news in that space.
Hopefully, we're
Yeah.
lucky. We're lucky to live in this part of the world,
Yes.
in this country, where there is a vision, where the leaders want to do everything in the best interest of the country and the people living in the country. And we've always noticed that they are pioneers and they follow technology, and sometimes they are even innovatives, you know. And I think the Museum of Future, who's just next door, is just an example. I mean, who would do a museum for future? So no, we here in the UAE, we do a museum for the future because they believe in future and they look forward for the future. So technology will be an integral part of our life, I think, in the coming 10, 15, 20, I don't know how many years after that.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
It was
you.
really interesting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope
Thank
to
you
see you
very much.
soon with some interesting news.
Inshallah.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you.
All right.